this intro is going to be my thankfulness for everybody that commented on my last video, my postscript book tag. Thank you so much. You were so encouraging and so warm, and you gave me so much encouragement when I was talking about my personal thoughts on my own channel. You know, it gets a little discouraging here and there, and I discuss that. And so many of you took the time to write me a comment, to give me encouragement. Thank you all so much. You're wonderful, you're lovely, warm people, and I really, really appreciated that. Hey BookTube, it's me, Kim, at Middle of the Book March, and this is my Bookish week. And what else did I have? I have 3 new books and a giveaway. I have one giveaway. And this is Happy New Year. This is my Bookish week for the 1st of January, 2022. Yeah, this will come out on New Year's Day. Just, you know, Anyway, I hope you guys had a great 2021. I know I did. It's been rough. It has been rough. But we're, you know, we power through, you know, humans power through. I've had, my whole family had COVID. I've known people who have lost family and friends. We lost some people at work. As I'm filming this, I have a very good friend whose daughter-in-law ended up in the hospital, who is also pregnant, but she is recovering. She's gonna do well. So it's been scary. For those of us who are introverted and read all the time, being home and having that excuse to be home has kind of been just so refreshing for me. When life is normal, when our environment outside our own homes is not, you know, fatal for many of us, it's hard to find the excuses to want to stay home and just read. That's kind of looked down on by your friends and family. So this has been just glorious to have this time to stay safe and hunker down and get so much great reading done. I hope you have all had the same opportunity to do that. Okay, let me tell you what I read last week. I was home the entire week on staycation from work. So I had last Monday off and Friday, and then I took the 3 days in between off for vacation, and it was a staycation. It was awesome, just simply awesome to have that time during the day to do whatever I wanted, wake up whenever I wanted, read as long as I want. I went and bought some books. I'm going to show you that. I have 3 new books, and I'll show you those. Okay, so let me get going. I finished 4 books this past week, or almost 4, and I'll tell you that. So that's why, because I had the entire week off. The first one I finished is The Golem and the Genie by Helene Wecker. I've had this book for a really long time. It was published, you know, not forever, because it's not that old, but it was published in 2013. And I had high hopes for this one, but this was kind of average for me. It's the story of two different world legends. The Golem is a Jewish creation, and the Genie is a Middle Eastern kind of a genie. And these 2 supernatural beings end up meeting in New York City in the late 19th century, so the late 1800s. Yeah, that's right. I don't know. Okay, so this was average for me. I had such high hopes because I thought the story is going to be really interesting, kind of fantastical, supernatural, and I was afraid it was going to be a little too whimsical for me. I don't like that in novels because I'm such a cynic and I can be really crusty and salty, but it wasn't that, so I thought it was going to be more like a fantasy, and it was kind of here and there, but the writing was just fine. There was nothing that I thought was very spectacular about the writing style, and this is a debut novel for her. It was. And the story was quite long when it didn't need to be. There was a lot of extraneous characters that it's like, okay, it doesn't add to the story. It just was, it was okay. I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. The Golem is a Jewish legend of a character that is created out of clay. And this particular Golem is a woman who was requested by a Jewish man that was leaving to go to New York City. He was taking an ocean voyage. And hold on, I'm going to sneeze. You only caught the front end of that one. What was I saying? Oh, okay. So he's crossing the ocean coming to New York City. This is very early in the book. On that ocean voyage, he ends up getting appendicitis and dying on the ocean voyage. But not before he brings the Golem to life, because she is packed in a crate, laying down, and she's human size. So this guy is expecting to bring her to life when he gets to New York. But he does it sooner. He can't wait that long, and he falls into the temptation of bringing her to life. So by the time he ends up dying from appendicitis, she is a living being. So she makes it to New York on her own. The Genie is basically stuck in a bottle, and he has been alive for about 1,000 years. He was tricked into being jailed and imprisoned in a bottle as a genie, as a servant, by an evil wizard, and he ends up in, I don't even remember how, but the flask that he's contained in ends up being handed to somebody in New York, and it comes into the shop of a tinsmith, and the owner of the flask is asking for repairs, and this tinsmith starts to repair this copper flask and rubs it the right way, and lo and behold, the Genie comes out of the bottle. So it's an interesting concept of these two characters coming to life and their separate lives, but then eventually they converge. But there was a lot here that I thought it was too long. It was too long-winded. I wanted it to be more fast-paced. That was the issue, is the pacing. The pacing was off for me. But it was it was a fun story. The writing was good. It wasn't great. And towards the very end of the book, she used the phrase, "as far as the crow flies." And if you've listened to me in the past 2 years, you know how much I hate that phrase in a novel, that stereotypical cliche. I detest it. And it's like it was too late to DNF the book at that point. Had it appeared in the first 50 pages, this book would have been on the shelf or in a bag to unhaul. But it was a decent book. The next one I finished on my Kindle, and it's The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante, the author of the Neapolitan Quartet, which I adore. She also wrote Days of Abandonment. But I read The Lost Daughter by Elena Ferrante, and this is a novella. It's under 200 pages. And this is the story of Elena. She tends to use that name in a lot of her books, and I think that's the woman's name. She is a middle-aged woman with 2 adult daughters. She's divorced, and her husband lives in Canada with her adult daughters, and she's in Italy, and she goes on a seaside extended vacation. And she goes to the beach every day. She's a literature professor. She's got a lot of books and papers with her. She starts to befriend this Neapolitan family. And one of the women has a daughter who's about 3 years old, who she always sees on the beach with this baby doll. And this doll is old, and it's written on, and it looks like it's seen better days, but this small child loves this doll. One day, the doll goes missing on the beach, and it's bedlam. It's complete chaos for this little 3-year-old girl and her family. And so we read what happens with the English professor on the beach and this family and the lost doll. It's so interesting because one thing Ferrante is brilliant at is writing relationships between mothers and daughters, which is what the Days of Abandonment also contained, but also relationships in the context of Italian families, especially families set in Naples and Neapolitan backgrounds. Phenomenal analysis of motherhood and of motherhood after being a divorced wife and having children. There's questions of child abandonment and a woman who is trying to find herself, and what happens when motherhood was not all that it's, stacked up to be. And Ferrante is excellent at doing that analysis and writing that into her novels. So I really enjoyed reading this. It was a 4-star for me. I love Ferrante's writing. It was a short book. It could have been longer. I would have enjoyed reading more of the story. And it was very good. I would recommend it. The next one I listened to on audio and it was phenomenal. It was Ain't I a Woman by Bell Hooks. And Bell Hooks just recently died, I think on December 16th. She was 69 years old. And this book was published in 1981. If you listen to it or read the book, it's helpful to remind yourself this is a 40-year-old book. And, but even as I kept reminding myself of that, the text is so timely. And unfortunately, I could still relate to a lot of the concepts that she was talking about. She was an author, a professor, a Black feminist activist, and this was her first book after a short poetry collection. But it's just brilliant and so powerful about, she talks a lot about the generations of slavery, generational slavery for Black people and African Americans. She talks about Jim Crow. She talks about the relationship between slave men and slave women and patriarchy, misogyny. She talks about the white feminist movement compared to, is there a separate Black feminist movement and should there be? Because Black women were left out of the white feminist movement in the 60s. And it's difficult to listen to that, but quite honestly, after I got over my white fragility in certain points, I realized this is all true. Black women did not have a voice in the wave, a second wave feminism in the 60s. And so she's extremely poignant and pointed about writing about those experiences. She discusses the relationship between Black men and Black women and the patriarchal attitudes of both genders, and even in the 60s and the 70s. It's an extremely powerful book. Excellent concepts, things to really think about. It's kind of one of those classics of feminist literature that anyone should read. And not just feminists, not just women, but anyone should read. It's a modern classic of not just feminist literature, but women's literature and a history of humans. So it's an excellent book. I would highly recommend it. And the last one is, I went back to a book that I really loved, and it's a series. I'm reading The Likeness by Tana French, or by the time the video goes up, I would have finished this. This is the second in the Dublin Murder Squad series, and I love the nickname. I love that nickname. It's set in Dublin, and this picks up with the character Cassie Maddox. Cassie Maddox is a detective, and she worked on the first case from French's first book, In the Woods. And she was part of the Dublin Murder Squad, but she ended up leaving the murder division and going to the domestic violence division. Before all of that, she was in undercover, and there was a traumatic event that happened to her, which is spelled out in this book, and she's now working in the domestic violence division. She gets pulled back into a murder that the undercover chief wants her to be a part of, and considering her background and the trauma that she experienced, she's not sure she can do it. There is a young college student found murdered in a ramshackle Irish famine cottage. These are cottages that were deserted by people fleeing the famine in Ireland. And a young college student is found murdered in one of these little shacks. So she is asked to come to this murder site by her boyfriend, who is on the murder squad and investigating. He's a detective. When she gets to the shack, she really has no part in this division. Her boyfriend has just begged her to come to the scene and disguise yourself. And she's questioning, what is this for? When she gets to the murder scene, she realizes the young woman who was murdered is her identical lookalike. And plot ensues from there. I'm not going to say anything more. This is a police procedural mystery book. There's no more I want to say. But I love Tana French. I love the stories. It's kind of chunky. The book may be a little longer than it needs to be, but it's just so much fun. She's a fun writer. I love her writing style. She puts a lot of meat into the story, into the writing. Her writing is very smooth and easy to read, interesting. She gives you a lot of backstory on the characters, which I love. And it was fun. I loved it, and I'm going to continue with the Dublin Murder Squad. I love reading it. I've also got some of her standalone books, too. Okay, those are the 4 books that I read. I bought 3 new books that I wanted to quickly show you. And I'm really excited about these. I took advantage of the Barnes & Noble 50% off hardcover sale. Barnes & Noble and Waterstones. Waterstones owns Barnes & Noble now. So the 2 stores have a 50% off after Christmas sale, 50% off all hardcovers. So the first one is a nonfiction, After 100 Winters, In Search of Reconciliation on America's Stolen Lands by Margaret D. Jacobs. And this, I had no idea this had been published. I saw it in the store, picked it up, and thought, that sounds fascinating. This confronts the harsh truth that the United States was founded on the violent dispossession of indigenous people and asks what reconciliation might mean in light of this haunted history. Margaret Jacobs is a historian, an author, and a professor, and I started to read the first part of this book, and the way that she wrote it, the narrative nonfiction aspect of it, it just hooked me right from the very beginning. So this is something I'm really looking forward to. The next one is translated fiction, and this is the newest novel from Sophie Oksanen. It is Dog Park, so I'm going to do the rest of this quickly. And Helsinki 2016, Olenka sits on a bench watching a family play in a dog park. A stranger sits down beside her. Olenka startles. She would recognize this other woman anywhere. After all, Olenka destroyed her life, and this woman may be about to do the same to Olenka. Yet for a fragile moment, here they are together looking at their own children being raised by other people. Sophie Oksanen is Finnish-Estonian novelist and playwright, and this book was translated by Owen F. Weitzman. She's definitely a very different, quirky, artistic author. One of her more well-known books is Purge. She also wrote the book Norma and When the Doves Disappeared. So I found this and I was very excited to pick that up. And the third one is what I've decided is going to be my first book of 2022, Louise Erdrich, The Sentence. This is her latest book, and she just won the Pulitzer Prize. Yes. It asks what we owe to the living, to the dead, to the reader, and to the book. A small independent bookstore in Minneapolis is haunted from November 2019 to November 2020 by the store's most annoying customer. Flora dies on All Souls Day, but she simply won't leave the store. Tuki, who has landed a job selling books after years of incarceration, what she survived by reading with murderous attention, must solve the mystery of this haunting while at the same time trying to understand all that occurs in Minneapolis during a year of grief, astonishment, isolation, and furious reckoning. It is set in current times, and I've heard glowing reviews all over BookTube, so this will be first book of 2022. I have a DNF and a giveaway. Zori by Laird Hunt. It was one of the 2 shortlisted National Book Award novels that I attempted to read. I finished Matrix by Lauren Groff. I did not like Zori. It was boring, and it's a very short book. If any of you would like it, I'm putting a picture here, but I do have the hard copy, and it's just in brand new condition. If you would like it, let me know in the comments below. The first one to let me know that will get the book, and then we can correspond privately so I can get your address. Zori is the tale of a young girl, I think in the 30s or 40s, and she ends up getting a job at a radium factory where she has to paint numbers on clocks using glow-in-the-dark radium ink. So it was a good idea, good theory, but I just did not enjoy the writing. I only got about a third of the way through this short novel and just didn't enjoy it. Wasn't for me. But if you would like it, I'll be happy to send it along to you. So let me know. Tell me in the comments below what you think of any of these books, if you've read them, if you're going to read them, what you think, if you disagree with me. I love to hear it all. I love your comments, and thank you. If you're watching and you haven't subscribed, please do. I love it when people subscribe. And that's it for me. I'll see you in the next video, everybody. Thanks for watching.